Okay, so here we go, talking a bit about trees today, how to set them up and how to distribute them randomly around your map. So before talking about how to put them all around, let's talk about how to set up your tree in its own scene. I've imported this model into its own scene, into its own new file. I've set it up how I like. Looking in the X and the Y flat on, I've got it lined up how I want. Here it's sitting on the bottom of the ground. It's just a very basic model. Bunch of planes for the branches and leaves and stuff, and a little bit of a bendy nice model for the trunk. Yeah, as you can see, we have a little bit of a transparent texture on the leaves here. And so the way you set that up is in shading. I'm using just the regular principled BSDF shader. The important thing here is for your color texture to have the transparency work how you want in the game. It should have a sub C1 tag on it. So that's one thing needed by the game to enable transparency. So I've got the name of my texture, Desert 60, sub C1. Save it like that. When you export your model, the BMap file will get made and it'll have transparency ready. Connect the alpha to the alpha. And this is just a normal image texture for this guy. The other thing that you can use when you're setting up your tree is you go over to your material name and you can give it the shader. So you put in your little pound symbol. And there are two shaders you could use. Either pound xtree or pound xtree subinstanced. Both of them look very nice, and the game handles the transparency slightly differently than it does if you leave that off. So if you leave that off, you'll see twinkly see-throughness in the distance in your trees. If you use the xtree or xtree instance shader, in the distance the trees look nice and full. They also get nicer color and shading depending on the weather. So if you leave that off, they look pretty bland. If you put it on, the game handles them in a very nice way. So the other difference between xtree and xtree instanced is supposed to be a faster type of shader. I'm going to be placing tons of trees, so I'm using that. But the instanced shader disables collision. And so because of that, for each of my trees, which is using that shader, I'm adding this little cube here. So hide this guy. I'm adding the cube for some collision around the trunk. I don't mind if people fly through the branches, but I want them to smash into the trunk of the tree. And on this cube, I've set collision to be true, use the pipe to separate, visibility to be false. So you can put multiple custom things or multiple of these bug menu things together using the pipe if you need to. So there you go. And that's one you can just choose here. Collision true, visibility false. So that's how I'm getting collision with the trunk while using the instance shader on the material. And that's your whole tree setup. So I've saved this guy as his own blend file. I've exported him as a BGO3 called Desert 60. That's the name of this tree. That makes the scene file that I will want to import into my map. And here's how we do that. So my main track looks like this. And it's got the decals all around for the road. They're kind of transparent here. You can see it's got some objects placed around, things like that. It's got the terrain in here. And so on and so forth. All the checkpoints, all the AI routes, everything are on this file. I took this thing and saved a copy of it. And then in that copy, I deleted everything but the terrain. So let's see what that looks like. I'll just save this because I moved the view around. I called that thing, instead of smooth, which is what the name of this one is, I called it veg. So here it is. It's now empty of everything but the terrain. And this is going to allow me to scatter my trees around on the terrain. I will save this thing as its own subscene, and then I'll go back to my map and import it as a subscene. So yeah, there you go. The reason I do it this way is because once you scatter trees all over the map randomly, it gets very laggy in Blender, and it's pretty unpleasant to edit your track anymore after doing that. So scatter your trees over here separately. You have it as its own separate subscene, and then you can have the game import it when it's loading your track. All right, so here we go. How do we start scattering trees around? Well, we should first import all of them as subscenes. So I'm going to import Bugbear scene as a subscene. I want 60. That shows up right there. You can just go over toward the middle of the track. All right. So there's my 60 guy. He's here, good to go. Oop. Just select the tree and not the terrain. Good. So we want him popped up sitting on the terrain. I have snap to face nearest going right now. I'm also going to import the rest of my trees. So 80. There that is. I'm going to import $115. Funny. This one I have moved down in its own file, so it's meant to sit underground halfway like this. In 4x4 Evolution, they a lot of times use these trees as bushes. So this is supposed to look like a big bush rather than a tree. My final guy here is this oak. All right, and there they are. Here's the 4 trees that I want to spread around my map. They look pretty huge. One nice thing about having them in their own scenes is if I want to adjust the size of all the trees, I get in the track and notice that they just are way too big. I will go into this guy's file, resize it, and then, you know, it'll be taken care of in the game. So, all right, how do we spread these things around? In your preferences, you are going to want to look for scatter objects. This used to come, I think, pre-installed with Blender or as part of Blender. Now you have to go search for it up here. You search for scatter objects, and it'll come up, and yeah, click on it, install it up, and then I'll show you how to use it. So when I scatter these trees around, I like to look from the top of my map here, and I'm just gonna try and scatter them around as randomly as possible. So I'm gonna select everything, and then as far as the Scatter Objects tool goes, the last thing you select is the thing you scatter on. So right now you see how this is highlighted in yellow. Actually, we want this one to be highlighted in yellow. So I did that by holding Control and clicking on that mesh. So now these guys are all selected, and this guy is sort of the main object. And then I go Object, Scatter Objects, boom. And that starts the tool. You see the Instances guy appears here. This is going to scatter all 4 of these trees around randomly. We want to look for the property of the Scatter Object stuff. So that's here in your tool. So your active tool is our Scatter Objects that we're using right now. The density I usually keep very low. I put it at like 0.01 or 0.02. The radius I make huge, like 500. And then I don't rescale them. I don't rotate them. I want no rotation. I want them to be standing up after they're scattered. I don't know, the scale, we can make them a little bigger and a little smaller, though I'm not sure what difference it makes. And one other thing I should say is that, notice, since we've imported these trees in here, they are XREF'd objects already. So that's nice. Wherever we scatter all these trees, the game is just going to pull from that one tree file that's there. So we'll load this bunch of trees as a subscene in our main map, and in this subscene it's loading each individual tree in this xref way. All right, so let's see. I've got my radius huge, I've got my density low. I'm letting it scale them, though I'm not sure what difference it makes. I don't remember if it does scale or not. And then I'm turning off rotation because I don't want my trees all laying over and stuff. All right, so once you have all those guys set up, you just start coloring. Where do I want trees? I want them here. Oh, look at that. So you notice it's barely doing any trees at all. That's not enough for us. So what should we do? We should turn the density up. Oh yeah. And so once you've drawn your map, you can adjust your density to see sort of what you want. So 1 is too much, maybe 0.5. What's this going to look like? I don't know, 0.1? Maybe that's the good density. All right, so that's kind of reasonable for what I'm doing. Of course, you can change it as you like, and it's spreading these 4 trees all around randomly like this. I don't really want them where I'm driving. Maybe my radius is a bit too big. Go something like 100 meters. I'm not sure. We'll adjust it later as needed. Put some more trees here, maybe. Put some stuff over here. So on and so forth. You just draw the stuff wherever you want it. And yeah. So I'll do more later. That's just to demonstrate. Once you've done drawing all your trees around, you can hit enter. There they all appear. Let's zoom in a bit and we can fly around and see. So I like the colors that this is using here, these pastels. We can see really the difference between everything that's gotten scattered around. So that's pretty good for a start. You know, if you want to come back and redo all this stuff, here's where your scatter appears. Each little thing gets named duplicator. So each tree got its own separate duplicator. Inside of that thing is this duplicator guy, as well as a copy of the original object. So once you've got these things going, the game doesn't understand these duplicators that I am aware of. And so what you have to do is you have to separate these things out all into their own objects. So here's how you do that. Let's work with this Desert 61. I erase the name duplicator, so it becomes a copy of that instanced object. The reason I do this is because when we separate this thing all out, we want them all to have this xref name and copies of it. If you leave duplicator and forget about that, then you'll have a bunch of duplicator stuff, and it is not what you want. All right, so we changed the name of the Desert 60. Now we are going to separate all these things out. So you go into edit mode. No, on these objects you right click. Let me see, what do we want to do? Edit mode. Do I want P? Not yet. I want to convert these guys all to mesh. So let me see. There we go. So in object mode, with all these guys selected from your renamed duplicator, right click. You want to convert them to mesh. Boom. So all these things have now been separated into meshes. You go into edit mode with all those things selected, and we are going to separate them out by loose parts. So you click P, separate by loose parts. Boom. And notice they've all disappeared. All of these things have become copies. They're all still selected, and they all get moved right here to the middle of the map. All right, so the final thing we need to do is leave edit mode. Leaving all those things selected still, we are going to right click and set the origin. We're going to move the origin to the geometry. Boom. All the trees move back to where they were. notice one weird thing that happens is all of the trees have now become small little dots. So if you're using scatter objects on your map and trying to do this for other purposes, you're going to be sad because everything's crushed into this tiny dot. For our purposes, we only care where those dots are placed and that they are X-refing that desert 60 scene. So they get placed all around where we had them before, and desert 60 will get loaded in there when we call this subscene into our map. So yeah, there you go. You do that, and I guess I'm going to make a new collection. Let me see. New collection, I'm going to call it Desert 60. If I was smart, I would have done that beforehand. Go down and grab all these guys that just got made. 133 of them. And I'm going to put those into the Desert 60 folder. Alright. This one you can just delete. And then you go and you do the same thing for all of these. So let's do it one more time just to see how it goes. Make a new one. I'm going to call it Desert 80. I'm going to drag this duplicator in there. I am going to rename it. Get rid of the duplicator part. Boom. So now it's a copy of that XREF scene. Alright, so in object mode again, you right click, you convert to a mesh. Then you go into edit mode by hitting tab. You hit P to separate by loose parts. Everything gets moved to the origin. And here we have a copy of all these XREF guys. I hit tab again to go back to object mode. I right click again, and now I set my origin to my geometry. That moves everything back where it should be, where we want it to be, and now all these guys are going to get called. So I don't know if we can see any of them up here as we cycle around, but there's a couple of them in the middle. So they're around, and they'll all appear as the tree they're supposed to. Alright, so that's that. Double clicking there, they all are again. There those guys are. We'll do the same for this duplicator and for this duplicator eventually. What is the final thing you want to do before you save? You don't need this terrain in here anymore. The terrain's already in your main map. So what I generally do here is I go File, I save my work that I've been doing as a blend file. That's my veg blend. And then before I export it, I click on my terrain, I delete it, and then I go File, Export, BGO3, I export it as my vegetation. Boom, done. So that's that. I don't save it now because I want to keep my terrain in there in case I want to do more trees later. So how do we get that vegetation into our main map that we just did? I'm going to go File, open up my main map here. I'm not going to save because I want that terrain back next time I open this. Here I am in my main map. I'm just going to use a plane as a placeholder for that vegetation scene. So I'm in here right now. I'm going to go Shift A. I'm going to add a plane. I want it to show up at the center of the origin here, not over here. It should be showing up in the middle of my world. So let's make sure that it's there. When I added the plane, it went to wherever the cursor was. Rather than moving the cursor, now that we found the plane, this is a much better way to do it. Let's just move this guy. Let's make his location 0, 0, 0. Alright, there you go. Now he's in the origin. Okay. Whew. Sorry about the brain lapse. Alright, so you want that vegetation plane that you're going to be working with at the origin, and then you're just going to make it an XREF. So XREF, it's going to call from the folder that this main map is in, and you have to remember the name of your thing. So you open up your folder, you look in here. Mine is called Truck Stop 101 Veg Scene. So where is that guy at? Boom, there it is. And oops, I don't want to open it. I just want to copy the name. So I'm copying that scene name and I'll paste it right there. Boom. Boom. So this plane will now call my vegetation scene in, and let's see if it worked. Some of those trees should not be showing, and some should be. So export this guy as a BGO3, export it as the name of my thing here, and then let's fire up the game and see if this is working for us. There we go. There's trees all over the place. Yay. Is it more than just the two? I think not that I can tell. This does look like the Desert 60 here. Boom, it's got collision. You can tell in the distance the shader looks good. You're not seeing a bunch of twinkling through the trees, which is good. And then we've got our oak over here. Looks quite huge. The traffic destroying cars. Awesome. Yeah, the oak is humongous. Cool. And then we have the 4 trees that were here initially called in as subscenes. So those things got spread around. I haven't done the duplicators yet, but these are the originals. So they're quite huge. I think I'll make them quite a bit smaller. Maybe half the size or something. I don't know. Well, there you have it. That's how you do randomly scattered trees around your terrain. I hope this thing is helpful to you. Good luck out there. Visit us on the Discord if you have questions. And catch you on the next one.